Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jason Swanson. I am the Director of Strategic Foresight with KnowledgeWorks, and I am pleased to bring you the final episode in our webinar series exploring state transformation and transformational change. Our guest for this episode is Tyler Samstag, a Director of Remake Learning. And so to provide just a little bit of context for this conversation, our previous two episodes in this series really used that lens of state transformation, but we talked to folks that occupied really positions in state education agencies. So they are in a position to be change makers, for which they're doing fantastic work. But we thought we would switch our viewpoint and perspective a little bit for this final conversation and really think about change making and transformation from the bottom up. So without further ado, Tyler, I'd like to kick it over to you if you could introduce yourself a little bit and let folks know who you are.
Thanks, Jason. Thank you, KnowledgeWorks, for having me today. Hi, everyone. My name is Tyler Samstag. As Jason shared, I am the Director of Remake Learning based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My background is in formal K-12 education. I'm a trained secondary English and special education teacher. I was born and raised in the city of Pittsburgh and left to start a teaching career in New York City. I taught in New York City for close to 10 years before relocating to Boston and finally boomeranging back to city of Pittsburgh, where I've been for the last 6 years and really love being back home.
Awesome. So I think let's just get right to it, right? Is that we're here to talk about transformation from the bottom up. And what we talked about is a networked, or I should say an ecosystem approach to thinking about transformation. So Remake Learning, to me, is one of the more exciting education initiatives or transformation initiatives in the country. So for the sake of those joining us, can you tell us about Remake Learning?
Absolutely. It's an exciting year for Remake Learning. Remake Learning is turning 15 this year. So 15 years, a decade and a half of network and ecosystem building. And so we're really excited to celebrate throughout 2022. But Remake Learning is a free peer network for educators and innovators in the greater Pittsburgh region. Our reach definitely expands beyond Pittsburgh proper throughout southwestern Pennsylvania into the northern panhandle of West Virginia. I really want to emphasize when we talk about the network, we strategically use that terminology, educators and innovators. And really by design from the very beginning, our network really spanned beyond just formal K-12 teachers, again, by design. And so when we talk about educators, we include folks, in higher ed, obviously K-12, but also the out of school learning spaces, librarians, but also learning scientists, designers, curriculum designers, technologists, artists. And so we are a network of folks really committed to education from many different levels, from many different lenses. And so at the heart of it, the network helps connect people, projects, and organizations, and kind of the outputs and what we strive to do. We want to make it easier for network members to share best practices, collaborate on new ideas, find funding, and professional learning as well. And so the network presently is made up of over 1,200 members. And in terms of what it is that we do, we host events, we coordinate topic-specific working groups, we share timely communications, we offer grant opportunities to fund learning projects, et cetera. And we'll dig a little bit deeper into what this actually looks like in practice a little bit later on, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And I think, so one, I want to signal for those of you joining us, one, thank you for sharing a bit of your time with us today. And two, please, if you have any questions for Tyler, be sure to add them to the Q&A chat. Sean, my colleague and our fearless producer, can also help field questions to us. So open invite, please ask. And then Tyler, I'm going to take you up on your offer here in that networks and ecosystems, right? They do a lot of things, right? Or at least conceptually, we think of them as playing or serving a lot of vital roles. So can you talk to us, as we think about transformation and the role that Remake really plays, really underneath of this idea is just like, what does Remake Learning do, right? So what are the key activities as we think about remaking learning in the region?
So we use the term steward a lot. And so the Remake Learning has a network or a group, excuse me, of folks, and we use the terminology, we work in service of the network. And so as folks come together, there's a lot of back end work that happens. And so the team really strives to be that steward, to be the catalyst to keep these connections moving forward. My predecessor, Sunana Chand, she often described the Remake Learning team as the connective tissue. And so we really strive to be that connective tissue between the organizations and the people that exist within the network. And so in terms of what it is that we actually do, we hear that question a lot. It sounds interesting, but great. What does this actually mean? What do you do? What does it look like in practice? We have what we call 5 core practices, and we often refer to these as our 5 C's. This information we published years ago in what was called our Remake Learning Playbook. It's freely accessible and available online. But we really pulled back the curtains and opened up to the public about what it is that we actually do. Again, this was published years ago. We still very, very much hold true to these 5 C's. And so I will go over what our network support strategies, our 5 C's are. And in a couple key ones, I'll share kind of what that actually looks like. And so our 5 C's, here we go. Number 1 is we communicate. So we provide a really robust communications infrastructure that spans organizations, it spans sectors and industries. Ultimately, our communication infrastructure, we aim to de-silo communications. And so even in a smaller size city like Pittsburgh, there exists so many silos within, or there used to exist so many silos within organizations committed to education. So universities might have one way to really share opportunities that exist within their environments. Libraries have another way to share these opportunities. And so it's very easy to just kind of overlook or not be aware of the many opportunities that exist. And so early on, Remake Learning committed to creating a central website, to creating a calendar that really is an open space for organizations to share opportunities in one central location. We have a blog that tells us stories across the network. We have very active social media and mailing list. This one might not be as sexy as some of the other ones, but it really has been important to be kind of a central place to share opportunities across the many different sectors that exist in the region. So that's number 1. Our second C is we convene. So we bring people together in a very similar way. Our goal is to get people in a room that traditionally might not be in the same room together. And so we do that through things like lunch and learns, meetups, even social events like happy hours. And an example of what a lunch and learn might look like, let's say that we are going to host an event that is focusing on maker education. And so we might invite 4 or 5 different speakers. One might be a speaker from higher education. So potentially it's somebody from Carnegie Mellon University that might share about the makerspace that exists within their library. We might have somebody from a school district. So potentially Elizabeth Ford School District, a school district in Allegheny County here outside of Pittsburgh, who might share what maker education looks like at the elementary level. We might have somebody representing Carnegie libraries that really showcase making opportunities that exist in neighborhood libraries. And then lastly, we might have somebody from Prototype, which is a community maker space that might showcase what it looks like to have a community-driven makerspace. And so although the topic spans all of these organizations, Each of the speakers will bring a really unique perspective. They'll bring really unique examples. And the goal is that those in attendance will find inspiration outside of what their context is, and then also potentially meet folks that they could partner with as they look ahead. So we have communicate, we have convene, and then we coordinate. That's our third C. So as folks start to come together in the same space, really organically, really naturally, we see it time after time, shared interests start to surface really quickly. And so the librarian might be talking to somebody from the community makerspace, and they might realize that they're working on very similar things, though potentially from different lenses, different perspectives, but they have those shared interests. And so as the network really starts to surface topics and spaces that are of particular interest across the network, we coordinate. And so we bring those folks together in a more sustained fashion. We dive a little bit deeper into the space. Oftentimes the early coordinating starts with asset mapping. So let's look at all the different players in the region who are working within this space. We then identify where there are gaps, where there are opportunities to really catalyze momentum, and how can this group of people coming together within this space really build momentum and create movement across the region. And so we primarily do this through what we call working groups. We've had many working groups over the years. We're really excited when they surface, when we create a working group, and we're also okay with sunsetting. Sometimes a working group achieves what it set out to do, and it's time to move on, and we're okay with that. We have 4 active working groups at the moment. We have our STEM ecosystem, which is part of the national STEM ecosystems. We have our Maker Learning Collaborative. We have our CS for Pittsburgh, which is a focus on computer science in the region. And our newest one, which is in partnership with KnowledgeWorks, is our personalized learning working group. I'm especially excited about our personalized learning working group, and I think it really because it illustrates the power of a networked approach, of an ecosystem approach in the working groups. And so in Pittsburgh, we had 3 really established bodies of work exploring personalized learning over the last few years. We had the University of Pittsburgh's Institute of Politics, which was looking at personalized learning through a policy lens. We have a really incredible project based out of CMU's Human Computer Interaction Institute, which is PL Square, which is looking at personalized learning through a technology lens, through a platform lens. And then we had for years district leaders coming together in the Southwest PA Personalized Learning Network who were exploring personalized learning through a practice lens. And so here are 3 really established bodies of work. And so as we formed and as we created our working group focused on personalized learning, the goal was to bring these different bodies of work together continuously throughout the year. And in the early stages of this working group, it was really nice because one of the early kind of low-hanging fruit things that were identified that the working group could tackle is it became clear that each of these bodies of work were talking about very similar things, but they were using different language. And so the members of the working group early on said, why don't we create a shared vision for personalized learning? And so that was one of the very first things that the group tackled. And just again, to kind of standardize an understanding of what folks mean when they talk about personalized learning. And so I'm going to just keep kind of reviewing. So we have communicate, we have convene, we have coordinate. Our third one or fourth one, is catalyze. Our 4th C is catalyze. And so we fund new learning projects, programs, and practices through grant funding, catalytic grant funding. And so oftentimes when you get people in the same room together, you surface those shared interests, ideas start to fly. Ideas about possibilities. What if we work together to do X, Y, Z? Oftentimes, folks might record these on Post-it notes, throw them up on the wall. And it's very easy for these really great ideas or potentially really great ideas to just remain on Post-it notes, sticking on the wall. And so through the catalytic grant funding, Remake Learning for well over a decade has helped provide a little bit of seed funding to to bring some of these innovative ideas to life, or to at least test the waters and see if there's something there. And so our catalytic grant funds have ranged over the years to things that are more localized to support innovation within a classroom or within a single library, to much more systemic grant opportunities to catalyze systemic shifts. And so a few years ago, we had our Blueprint for Learning grants, which provided grant funding to organizations to rethink learning spaces. And then over the last 2 years, we've had our newest grant opportunity, which has been our Moonshot grants. KnowledgeWorks were really important thought partners in this process. But the Moonshot grants launched in 2021 at this really kind of pivotal moment in education, invited educational organizations to think really boldly about what they would like the future of learning to look like, and then to pitch an idea that they could test with the goal of catalyzing movement towards what we call the preferred future of learning. And so a couple examples of what these grants have funded over the last year and a half. We have an organization called Hatch, which is an early learning center, early education organization. They're challenging traditional notions of play as a powerful form of learning. We have the Cornell School District, which is challenging traditional notions of teacher professional development by creating pathways of learning that teachers can choose. We have California Area School District, which is challenging traditional notions of formal schooling. And they've done this by creating highly personalized, student-centered learning opportunities. And then we have the Oasis Farm and Fishery at the Bible Center Church. They're challenging traditional notions of when and how learning happens by creating opportunities for multi-generational learning. These are just 4 of many projects that have been funded. It's been really incredible to see these organizations experiment with these bold ideas that they have created. And then our final C, which is really, really important, is as we're bringing people together to coordinate efforts as we are catalyzing momentum through grant funding. Our final C is we champion. So we celebrate the innovative work across our region through large-scale showcases, events, festivals, publications. And so we want to share the learnings of the network to others so that they can be inspired by, they can replicate, they could even scale the learnings that are taking place in different organizations across the region. Would love to invite all of our participants to take a look at some of our publications that we've put out over the years. You can find that at remakelearning.org/publications. But there are many examples within these publications that really exemplify what it looks like when we kind of, as a region, are collectively remaking learning.
That's awesome. And when we start to talk about or reflecting on what you said about ecosystem stewardship, right? And it really boiling down to those 5 key components, those 5 C's, that it's simple on the surface, right? But we know that the execution can be somewhat complex. So I want to take just a step back. I've got so many questions for you following on from that. But as we do this work, as you engage in ecosystem stewardship, this is a really potent form of transformation because you're seeding all of these little bets across the region. But how is Remake Learning thinking about transformation, right? Is that we're doing this for a reason. We're recognizing that we want to kind of bridge our current reality, right, with a future that does not exist yet. So like when it comes to think about these initiatives in service of transformation, like how do you all think about transformation at Remake?
I'm going to step back even more just for a moment and maybe contextualize it into why Southwestern PA and parts of West Virginia, why Pittsburgh, why have we been so successful in creating this ecosystem in our region? And Pittsburgh is the Steel City, and it is Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. And these are two legacies that I think have created the conditions for this network within our region, and is our two legacies in which we really lean into and want to build upon it. And what we mean by that is the Steel City. I mean, for generations, Pittsburgh was a very industrial city. Many people still might hold visions of Pittsburgh as this very smoky city due to the many steel plants that existed across the three rivers that are where Pittsburgh is at the confluence of. But Pittsburgh, for the last few decades, has been transforming itself with an increased emphasis on the medical industry and higher ed, and then more recently technology. So things like robotics, artificial intelligence, and now even space exploration. Pittsburgh is becoming a hub for it. And so it's not uncommon to walk down a street in Pittsburgh and see an autonomous vehicle. I mean, and so which really kind of demonstrates the shift that has existed in Pittsburgh. And then from the lens of Mr. Rogers, this was a program for generations, for decades, really was steeped in the learning sciences. And so really using the learning sciences and just science in general to inform that program. And so as we put those two legacies together, it becomes, walk down the street of Pittsburgh and things are changing. And so Remake Learning really strives to ensure that learning is keeping up with the transformation that's happening in the world around us that is so very apparent. And so our mission is we are a network that ignites engaging, relevant, and equitable learning practices in support of young people navigating rapid social and technological change. And so in terms of what our views on the future of learning, it really is right there within that mission, which is that engaging, relevant, and equitable learning. And so that's what we are working really to progress within the region. And so we do operationalize what that means. And so I'll go through these really quickly, but we believe as a network that when learning is engaging, learners have the time, resources, support, environment, and encouragement to be active problem solvers, to be creators, innovators, advocates, and citizens. We believe that when learning is relevant, it resonates today with learners' interests, culture, context, community, identity, abilities, and experiences, while allowing room for exposure and growth. It prepares learners for the future in which interdisciplinary skills like creativity, problem solving, critical thinking, and collaboration will increasingly be salient. And then lastly, we believe that when learning is equitable, more supports and opportunities are afforded to those of greatest need. And so based on national and regional research, this means particular attention is paid to working alongside, as well as uplifting and supporting the voices, strengths, and potential of learners in poverty, learners of color, learners in rural areas, girls in STEM, and learners with disability. And we call these our equity pillars. And so we really strive to center these equity pillars and across all of the work that Remake Learning does.
So pivoting back to those 5 C's, right? And when asking that question about transformation, in all honesty, it is a little bit loaded question, right? Because you all serve, you said 1,500 organizations, in that each one of those organizations have their own idea about transformation, their own vision, their own values. So you really do serve that catalytic force of rallying people and driving folks towards the future. And again, using those 5 very simply and very robust, those 5 C's. And, oftentimes when I get the privilege of talking about Remake Learning and talking about the future, it's usually followed on by, how can I do that here, right? How can I get this started in my own community? But I think we can step back for just a moment. I think you alluded to this, that Pittsburgh is a unique place, not only in terms of the industry here, eds, meds, technology, we're also geographically bounded, right? We've got mountains and rivers, so that we've got a density of connection in what I would call the biggest small town I've ever lived in, right? So it's easy to form community and connection, right? And to be a part of a network like Remake. But when we start to think about rural learners or our neighbors, and we're the gateway for Appalachia, right? And what it means for those 5Cs to operate in an environment that isn't urban centric, because I think a lot of times when we think of ecosystems, we do have a predominantly urban centric view of how that looks. So I'm curious to know in what ways Remake Learning is thinking about West Virginia, more rural areas, because we do span, or Remake does span a pretty large region, even outside of Pittsburgh.
It's a great question. You can travel even 30 minutes outside of the city of Pittsburgh and be in a very rural community. And with that fact, many years ago, Remake Learning really kind of doubled down on that commitment to the rural equity pillar, recognizing that establishing relationships within our rural communities needed to be intentional, and also that rural communities had different needs, quite frankly. And so we created a position within the Remake Learning core team focused on rural education. So we have a rural outreach coordinator, and really is focused on building those relationships. And we see kind of that rural outreach component being twofold. And what it looks like for us is that we are bringing opportunities into the rural communities. And so we really kind of intentionally make sure we're hosting physical in-person events within different rural communities, but then create really clear, unique on-ramps to the larger body of work, and make sure that there's opportunities for rural communities to go see other communities. And so we've done that through the creation of a position specifically focused on building relationships within the rural communities. Some of the events that we've hosted this year through the rural coordinator are rural STEM educator meetups. We've had a number of events focused on agriculture ed and the intersection of emerging technology and agriculture. And so, yeah, those are just some of the examples, and making sure that there's, I think, specific supports for opportunities like our catalytic grant funding to ensure that these opportunities, are within reach of our rural partners.
So those 5Cs stay a constant, right? No matter what type of locale we're in. And even going back to the idea of moonshots, right? And championing and catalyzing innovation, California Area School District, not a giant school district, but are engaged in what I would consider radical personalization, right? That they're able to push that envelope because of, well, the 5Cs at play from Remake, right? So one of the through lines through these conversations we've had with folks talking about state transformation is the role of community, right? And how we bring community on for the ride. So when we're talking about really big change to education systems or even ed innovation, there's always both the acceptance and excitement over doing something new, yet reticence, right? And typically reticence from family that no family member wants to feel like their learner is either being experimented on or we're going to put their future at risk. So David Cook talked about visioning with communities and going around his state and asking folks what they want for the future. Sarah Young talked about collaboratively building out a profile of a graduate. Remake Learning, I feel like, has cracked this code of bringing community along for the ride through letting them in and letting them experience the innovation in the region. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about that, more specifically about Remake Learning Days.
Yeah, so Remake Learning Days definitely ticks off the many things that you have just talked about. And so Remake Learning Days started 6 years ago in Southwestern Pennsylvania and West Virginia specifically. And at that point in the evolution of the network, Remake Learning, or there were organizations across the region remaking learning, really kind of creating opportunities for hands-on, engaging, inquiry-based learning. It was happening at the community center, it was happening at the library, at centers of faith, at school districts. When you were here, you could just kind of feel that energy of organizations really thinking innovatively about learning. And so Remake Learning Days was created as an opportunity for these organizations to open up their doors and invite learners alongside their parents and caregivers into their spaces to experience this learning in real time. And so those early days of Remake Learning Days, we marketed it as the world's largest open house for hands-on learning. And so what that would look like is over the course of 2 weeks, there were hundreds of events, almost all of them free or no cost, that families could go to together over the course of 2 weeks. And so the events took place at the Carnegie Science Center, at various Carnegie libraries, at school districts all across the region, but also with industry partners. And so folks like Shell Games, a regional gaming design company, would open their doors so young people could see what it looks like to be a game designer. We had community-based organizations where learning took place, also opening their doors. And so that was highly, highly successful. And we've conducted research over the years. And what we have found is that when the parents and caregivers would engage in this learning alongside their children, they had a better understanding of what inquiry-based hands-on learning looked like, but they also felt more confident in supporting their children in things like coding. And so maybe a grandmother went to an event with their grandchild at a library where they were coding in Scratch. We have that evidence that shows that that parent, that caregiver, that grandparent feels more comfortable in supporting their children, their grandchildren in the learning taking place. And so that has, we have been really successful to see momentum in that grow tremendously over the last 6 years. A few years ago, this has expanded across the United States. And so this past year, Remake Learning Days took place in 17 regions across the United States, from San Diego to Philadelphia. We have international partners who have replicated the model, like in Christchurch. And so it just has been really incredible. And it's been incredible to I think, catalyze change in organizations, to open doors and support parents in engaging in this learning with their young ones, their learners. And then from a network perspective, we really have seen that it allows, because it's a festival we host every year in May, it provides an opportunity for network members to re-engage every year. And it's a incredibly fun 2 weeks here in the city of Pittsburgh. I love it every year. I get to travel across the city and just visit hundreds of sites of learning across our region.
My favorite time of year, frankly. It's an incredible experience. So I think that it's interesting to hear you talk about that from not an acceptance standpoint, but having caregivers that, engaging in hands-on learning to build an awareness of what's going on. I would assume too that the other two benefits are it grows the network, right? It continues to create a density of connections amongst folks because it's a massive advertisement in a way, right? But I think more importantly than that is it begins to put parents and caregivers into the role also not only of acceptance, but as advocates and change agents, because you experience all these things and then you can start to ask questions, right? You can clarify what not only is possible, but might be preferable too. So it's not only do you bring them along for the ride, like you're empowering them to ask these questions through these experiences. And it's something that I have great admiration for. So taking a look at time, we've got about 10 minutes left. So audience, and again, call for any questions. Feel free to throw them in the chat. We'll do our best to get to them. But we've talked about a lot, right? We've talked about what Remake is. We've talked about what ecosystem stewardship essentially boils down to, your key activities. And we talked about bringing the public along. So for you, you've been in the network for quite a while. You're in a stewardship position now. What advice do you have for folks that are interested in sort of this ecosystem approach that maybe, hear everything you're saying and say, this is right for our community?
So we will be publishing a book in a few months, really commemorating our 15 years of ecosystem building in the region. And for that book, we reflected on this question. And so I will share 4 lessons that we have featured in our upcoming publication. And so the first is make little bets. And so thousands of little bets rather than grand sweeping proclamations can add up to make a difference. And so we look for ways to make incremental progress toward change. So that's our first piece of advice. Second is tell great stories. Educators have enough to do as they serve students. They often don't have the time to take photos, write blogs, posting their reflections on efforts. And so as a network, we have committed to documenting the network's stories of success, especially when people lack the resources and time to do it on their own. Third is bring the bagels or any kind of food. Sometimes effective network stewardship means bringing bagels or pizza, coffee, snacks. We have learned, do not estimate how much good food can influence the attendance and the vibe of an event. We believe if you feed them, they will come. And then last piece of advice, throw a party. Take the opportunity to celebrate wins, big and small. Those celebrations rally people, organizations, and communities, and they become touchstones for people to return as they reflect on their work and how far they've come. 4 potentially simple pieces of advice, but 4 really powerful things that we've learned along the way.
I love it. So what's next for Remake Learning? I mean, you all have had 15 years, I think, coming out of the pandemic into this new normal. I would say that this has been an amazing year, despite, all the hardships and tensions. But as you look ahead, what's next for the network?
In a really immediate sense, it will be building and rebuilding community in the region after the pandemic has forced people to stay somewhat secluded over the last 2.5 years. We're really committed to just providing the opportunity for folks to connect and reconnect, reestablish relationships that span their own organization or their own classroom. People for the last couple of years have had to be very attentive to their own health. And so our goal now is to start introducing back into the network those opportunities to connect and build and establish partnership. We're really interested in kind of systems level change. And so things like our moonshot grants are really encouraging folks to utilize this moment in time where so many have been able to imagine education happening in a different way due to the pandemic, and really start to push how we might leverage that to create systems level transformation. And so things like the moonshot grants, you refer to California area school district. We've learned so much from this smaller school district about an hour outside of Pittsburgh, who are really leveraging their grant opportunity to rethink really student-centered learning, where students get to explore topics of interest. And so another great example of kind of systems level change that we're excited about, and then to tell those stories and support others and catalyze in similar change within their own organizations. So I think that that's going to keep us busy for the next couple years for sure.
No doubt about it. All right, Tyler, final few minutes. Can you tell folks where to go to learn more about Remake Learning and or how they might be able to connect with you should they have any questions?
Absolutely. Please visit remakelearning.org. That has all the information about our ecosystem. There's a team page on there in which you can find both myself and others who are part of the Remake Learning team. I can be reached at tyler@remakelearning.org. If you're interested in just dabbling and learning more, definitely encourage you to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have a mailing list that we send out regularly that also provides updates both on Remake Learning events, but other opportunities that exist across our region and beyond.
Awesome. So I would like to thank Tyler for his time. I'd like to thank everybody joining us, spending your time and sharing the space with us. This concludes our transformation series. So for those of you that have registered, expect to see the recording of this in your inbox in a few weeks. Tyler, again, thank you for sharing the story of Remake and your perspective and expertise with us.
Thank you. Both yourself, Jason, and KnowledgeWorks as a whole have been really just incredible partners with Remake Learning over the years. And so we're grateful to you, to the organization, and for this opportunity today.
And we to you. Cool. Thanks, everyone.